Most people think the real problem with $100,000 is how hard it is to reach. I have never believed that was the whole story. Reaching it is hard, very hard for many people, but keeping it, protecting it, directing it, allowing it to become something larger than a static savings balance. That is where a different kind of difficulty begins. If you handed most people $100,000 today, they would not see a machine. They would see pressure. They would see a fragile pile of effort. They would see years of work condensed into one number and instantly become afraid of making the wrong move. They would say, I should be careful, I should wait, I should not do anything dumb. Let me leave it where it is for now. Let me wait until I understand more. Let me wait until the market feels safer. Let me wait until I feel smarter. I understand those instincts, but I do not trust them because fear has protected some people from stupidity. It has also quietly prevented millions from building wealth. That is why I think the first 100,000 matters so much. It is not only a financial milestone, it is the first moment when capital in your life becomes large enough to reveal who you really are around money. Do you treat money as a machine or as a nervous possession? Do you know how to allocate or only how to accumulate? Do you understand what capital can do once it is left alone long enough to work? Or do you still see it as something that exists mainly to be protected from every visible form of danger while you quietly accept invisible forms of loss? That was the strongest thing in the reference document. The real power of $100,000 was never that it is a pretty number. It is that once you cross that threshold, compounding begins to matter in a way most ordinary people can finally feel. Your money can start contributing in a visible way. The machine begins to wake up. Fay file site, Fay turn 38, file 0 Fay, that is where I would begin the story. Not with budget categories, not with shame, not with one more financial content creator screaming about discipline, with a different question. What is $100,000 if it is treated correctly? My answer is simple. It is the first truly meaningful piece of financial machinery most people will ever own. And if you do not understand that, you can work very hard to save it and still misuse it once it arrives. That is why I always tell people the first 100,000 is not freedom. It is your first serious opportunity to build freedom. Those are different things. A lot of people confuse accumulation with liberation. They think once the number appears, the problem is solved. The problem changes. Before 100,000, the problem is usually how do I save? After 100,000, the problem becomes how do I keep from interrupting the process that could make this amount life-changing? That is a very different problem. The source text was right to attack one of the biggest myths here. More income alone does not solve the issue. Many people say if I just earned more, everything would be fine. But the world is very eager to give every new dollar a destination. Bigger house, better car, better hotel, better schools, better everything before long. Higher income has only created more expensive obligations. Fay file site, Fay turn 38, file 0 Fay, that is not wealth, that is lifestyle expansion wearing the costume of success. I have always found that dangerous because it flatters people. It allows them to feel upwardly mobile while their actual freedom hardly improves. The first 100,000 exposes whether a person has learned the most important conversion in personal finance, the conversion from labor into capital. Not labor into nicer consumption, not labor into proof, not labor into temporary emotional relief, labor into capital. That conversion is the whole game, and it begins, as the source document correctly argued, with removing the force actively working against you. High interest debt. People hate hearing about debt because it is not glamorous. Fine, glamour has made enough people poor already. Debt is the place where speed matters most because compound interest is working against you there. A person trying to invest seriously while carrying credit card debt at vicious interest rates is trying to build a machine with a leak under the floor. The numbers may move, but so much energy is being drained that progress feels almost insulting. That is why the source text was right to insist that you confront the debt first. Fay file site, Fay turn 38, file 0 Fay. I want to say that plainly. You do not need perfect optimization to get rich. You do need to stop financing your own suffocation. And the first step is always clarity. How much do you owe? At what rate? What is the month and year the debt ends if you change nothing? Most people do not know that ignorance is expensive. The source document was exactly right, that simply knowing those answers already puts you ahead of an astonishing number of people. Personal finance is not only about intelligence, it is about willingness to look. Fay file site, Fay turn 38, file 0 Fay, then comes something many people underestimate. Momentum. When the debt starts shrinking, the machine starts breathing. A person begins feeling stronger before he is free. That matters because the first 100,000 is built not only by arithmetic but by emotional momentum. You stop paying as much tribute to banks. You stop losing as much of each month to the past. You stop feeling that all your work is being eaten before it can become anything. That sensation matters more than people admit. Once people feel progress, they can keep going. Now let us talk about cutting costs, because most people either get this completely wrong or make it so joyless they sabotage themselves. I am not interested in telling grown adults to save their future by rinsing sandwich bags and congratulating themselves for reusing paper towels. That is not a serious wealth strategy. That is poverty theater. The source document got this exactly right. You cut costs mercilessly on the things you do not love so you can spend extravagantly on the things you do. That is not only more enjoyable, it is more durable over time. Fay file site Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay durability matters. The person who builds 100,000 usually is not the person who had the strongest burst of anger one January. It is the person who found a philosophy he could live inside for years. Maybe he loves travel. Good, then he should spend on travel proudly and cut other things without whining. Maybe he loves food. Fine. Then let food matter and let something else become ordinary. The key is honesty. People do not love everything equally. When they say they do, what they really mean is they do not want to face trade-offs. But trade-offs are where adulthood begins. That is why I like the source document, mockery of the excuse. I love everything. It is lazy, and laziness around decisions is very expensive. Fay file site Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay, the first 100,000, requires adult trade-offs. Not misery, not self-punishment, trade-offs. Then income. Here I agree with the source text. Again, income alone will not save you, but learning to earn more still matters tremendously. A lot of people act as if income is static. It is not. Income is partly structure, partly skill, partly negotiation, partly value creation, and partly courage. A person can learn to earn more. That is a real skill, not completing online surveys for coins, not pretending that scraps are strategy. A real skill, how to negotiate, how to interview, how to create demand for what you do, how to offer value clearly enough that people pay you more. The source document treated earning more as a skill. And that sentence matters because it moves a person from passive wishing into active construction. Fay file site Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay, but there is a deeper point. Higher income matters most when it arrives into a structure ready to receive it. If more money enters a life with no system, it usually exits faster and with better branding. That is all the person upgrades his spending. He does not upgrade his machine. That is why the most powerful section of the source text was the automation flow, direct deposit in savings, and investing out automatically guilt, free spending from what remains. That is how adults reduce the number of beautiful intentions required every month. Fay file site Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay. I love automation because it removes emotion from repetitive good decisions. Money should flow like water. When the paycheck lands, part of it should leave for the future before your current mood ever gets a vote. That is one of the simplest and most powerful things a person can do if your future is funded only by what is left over. Your future will almost always be underfed. Leftovers are not a strategy. They are a confession that the present still eats first, and the present will always eat first if you let it. That is why I prefer systems to effort. Effort is noble. Systems are dependable. The person who tries to make 20 perfect money decisions every payday while tired, distracted, stressed, and surrounded by temptation will eventually fail. The person who builds a machine and lets the machine carry part of the load has a chance. Then comes one of my favorite ideas in the reference document, the 1% December increase. I like it because it respects how human beings actually behave. People think wealth is built through giant moments of visible sacrifice. Often it is built through tiny increases that become part of the background and never get reversed. Increase your investment rate by 1% each December. That is all a small move. Small enough that the lifestyle barely notices, large enough that decades later the compounding notices very much. The source document was absolutely right that changes like this can be worth extraordinary sums across a working lifetime. Fay file site Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay. What I especially like is what this does psychologically. It changes identity. A person who invests 1% once is trying a tactic. A person who increases it each year is becoming the sort of person who pays the future first. That matters more than people think. Because the first 100,000 is really built by identity long before it is visible as a balance. Identity says I save before I spend. Identity says I increase the machine as my life expands. Identity says every raise is not an excuse for more obligations. Identity says more income means more conversion into capital. That is the kind of person the first 100,000 belongs to. Now we come to the moat, and I was glad the source document used that word because it is exactly right. An emergency fund is not a side quest. It is not something you get around to once life stops being inconvenient. It is part of what makes life less frightening. 3 to 6 months of living expenses, maybe eventually 12 liquid accessible. Not invested, not because I dislike returns. Because the job of the emergency fund is not to maximize returns. It is to absorb chaos. The source document was right to insist that this money must be accessible and predictable. Emergencies are the wrong time to discover that your safety money is temporarily down, gated, or inconvenient. Faithfully cite Turn 38 file 0 Fay. That is why I respect the moat so much. The moat keeps one surprise from becoming a full financial reversal. Without it, the machine is fragile, and fragility is expensive. People who have never been hit hard by life often talk about emergency funds as if they are wasted potential. I do not speak that way. The emergency fund buys dignity. It buys time, it buys options, it buys the ability to handle one blow without selling the future to do it. That is not wasted potential, that is protected potential. Now investing, and here I want to be simple enough that nobody can hide behind confusion. The first 100,000 does not require genius. It requires broad ownership, low cost, and time. That is why I agreed with the source document, emphasis on index funds and target date funds. Low cost, diversified, available almost everywhere, hard to break, easy to automate, the sort of thing ordinary people can actually own for a long time. Cite Turn 38 file 0 Fay. I have always believed that complexity flatters people and impoverishes them. They feel smart with a complicated portfolio. Then the fees arrive, the taxes arrive, the behavior problems arrive, and the account underperforms while the owner still talks as if he is sophisticated. No thank you. The fee illustration in the source document was excellent for this reason. Over a long period, the difference between a low-fee investment and a 1% management fee can become hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is not trivia. That is your future being siphoned away because the product felt respectable. Cite Turn 38 file 0 Fay. Respect for fees is respect for compounding. That is a sentence more people should live by. The first 100,000 is built not only by choosing well, but by refusing unnecessary leaks. Now, environment, this is where people get sentimental. And I have no interest in sentiment. Stop asking broke people how to build wealth. The source document was right about that too. If the people around you normalize debt, mock investing, live in perpetual short-termism, or treat wealth, building as something weird people do instead of something normal adults do, then their ceiling becomes your ceiling, unless you deliberately step outside it. Cite Turn 38 file 0 Fay. This is not cruelty. It is architecture again. Environment is one of the hidden structures of financial life. If no one around you behaves calmly with money, then calm wealth. Building will always feel unusual. You need a new normal, a normal where index funds are boring and beautiful. A normal where debt is confronted, not hidden. A normal where raises increase investing instead of obligations. A normal where 100,000 is not a fantasy number, but a system outcome. That is what better company gives you. Not miracles, normalization, and normalization matters. Because if good financial behavior feels alien, people rarely sustain it. Now, I want to protect another thing the source document got right. The warning against fake wealth culture, meme stocks, get-rich-quick nonsense, sleep 3 hours and build 6 income streams, the fake urgency of social media finance. I have no interest in that world. Real wealth is almost always more boring than social media can tolerate. That is one reason it works. The machine does not need applause. It needs continuity, and continuity is where most people fail. They want stimulation, they want visible excitement, they want to feel clever. Compounding does not care how clever you feel. It cares how long you leave it intact. That is why I trust boring more than hype. Boring scales, boring survives. Boring compounds. This is also why I agree with the document's warning against toxic frugality. You do not want to build 100,000 and discover you built an account without building a life. The point is not deprivation. The point is conscious design. Spend well, spend on what matters. Spend guilt-free after the machine is funded. That is the rich life. Not random indulgence, not performative suffering, intentional spending inside a system that protects the future. That is mature money. Then comes the trap I dislike almost as much as debt, the I missed my chance syndrome. A person learns about compounding and immediately starts mourning he should have started at 20. He should have bought earlier. He should have known better. Fine, he did not. Now what the source document handled this properly. Do not make the same mistake twice. Start now. The time machine is broken. The account is still available. Faithfulesite Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay. I have never admired regret. Regret does not compound. Action does. And this is where the first 100,000 reveals its deepest truth. It is not only a money milestone. It is an identity milestone. Have you become the sort of person who can build and protect a machine that is the real threshold? Because once you cross that threshold, something very important happens. The source document said it plainly after 100,000. The process changes because the compounding becomes more visible. Your returns start contributing enough that you can feel the machine helping you. The account begins to act less like a bucket you are filling by hand and more like an engine that is finally alive. Faithfulesite Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay. That visibility matters. It makes freedom believable. Before that point, wealth often feels theoretical. After that point, it starts to feel mechanical. And once a person feels that, protecting the machine gets easier because the proof exists. Now let me tell you what still ruins it. Short-termism. Always short-termism. The present always wants to eat first. The car, the upgrade, the trip, the new fixed cost, the emotionally satisfying purchase. The source document was right that the brain discounts distant rewards. That is why systems must be automatic. The future cannot compete with appetite in real time unless the structure gives it priority before emotion gets involved. Faithfulesite Fay turn 38 file 0 Fay. This is why the first 100,000 is ultimately not a money story. Only it is a maturity story. Can you let tomorrow eat first? Can you continue funding the machine when nobody congratulates you? Can you allow boring mathematics to become dramatic later? That is the test. If I had to reduce the entire framework to the cleanest possible form, I would say this: kill the debt that is strangling the machine, cut costs mercilessly on what you do not love. Learn to earn more as a skill, automate the future. Increase your investment rate every December, even by 1%. Build a real emergency moat. Own low-cost diversified investments. Ignore fake wealth theater. Find better financial role models. Stop grieving the years you missed and start protecting the years you still have. Do those things long enough and 100,000 stops being a fantasy. It becomes a consequence. It is a very different way to live. And I trust consequence more than inspiration. I trust machines more than mood. I trust continuity more than brilliance. That is why I would leave you with this. The first 100,000 is not the point where you prove you are special. It is the point where you prove you can build and protect a machine. And once you can do that, the next stages of wealth stop feeling mysterious. They become the extension of a process you already know how to respect. I want to add one more thing because this is where many people still get confused. They hear a story like this and think the lesson is to become fearless. Fearlessness is overrated. Some of the dumbest behavior in markets is performed by people who call themselves fearless. What you need is not fearlessness. You need emotional containment. You need enough calm that you do not confuse your feelings about risk with the actual role of risk inside your system. That is a huge difference. A contained investor can feel anxious and still follow the rules. An uncontained investor can feel brilliant and still destroy himself. That is why temperament matters so much. It is also why I think boredom is one of the great hidden advantages in investing. A good compounding system is often boring. It does not need to entertain you. It does not need a narrative every week. It does not need to prove its genius on command. It needs time. And time is exactly what most people refuse to give because their emotions keep demanding stimulation. This is why I say the machine has to be protected, not only from panic, but from boredom too. Boredom is where unnecessary activity is born. And unnecessary activity is how a good system gets wounded. So if I were looking at $100,000 with a truly long horizon, I would ask one final question. What kind of owner does this capital need from me? Not what do I want from it this month? Not how fast can it impress me? What kind of owner does it need? It needs patience. It needs rules. It needs respect for fees and friction. It needs a person willing to fund it more instead of trying to harvest it too early. It needs someone who understands that the curve is earned in silence before it is visible in public. That is what people miss. The impressive part of compounding happens late. The difficult part happens early. The early part feels slow, modest, unglamorous, and almost unfairly uneventful. That is exactly why so few people see it through. They demand emotional rewards from a process designed to deliver mathematical rewards later. The adult investor accepts that sequence, and because he accepts it, he reaches places the impatient person never does. So, no, I do not think $100,000 is automatically enough to set you free. But I do think $100,000 is enough to reveal what kind of financial thinker you are going to become. Will you protect it too timidly and let inflation eat it? Will you excite yourself with needless activity and let friction eat it? Will you worship high return and let taxes and mistakes eat it? Or will you build a real system, one strong enough to compound while your emotions take turns trying to interfere? That is the real test, and that is why this whole framework matters. Not because it glorifies a number, because it teaches you how to think. $100,000 can remain a nervous pile of money, or it can become the first true engine of your freedom. That depends much less on the market than people think, and much more on whether you finally learn to behave like a builder instead of a spender with better intentions.